as in people who are charging a certain amount, that perhaps it's not worth paying them that amount, and you have to structure a film accordingly. Now, some studios perhaps took some kind of decisions that may have, and we've all gone wrong as boutique production houses like Dharma Productions or studios. There have been certain, I don't think like, well, I'll tell you, Yash Chopra once told me, films don't fail, budgets do. And it was, of course, a very powerful thought made by a veteran filmmaker. But very honestly, there was virtue and reality in what he said. That if you budget a film and you make sure that, every single... If you have a film that does not warrant a certain price in a certain territory, you must not charge it. That kind of gumption you have to have as a filmmaker. I can proudly say that at Dharma Productions, we make sure that no studio has ever lost money with us. When I was with UTV and Ronnie and we released a film called Kurban that didn't do well, the immediate successor to that was a film called I Hate Love Stories, which actually we gave them at like cost level so that they would make up the loss. Similarly, I've had incidents like that with Fox and with Eros on when we've done 3 films internationally with them. It's very important, and that's something that I've been inherently trained to do by my father, is when you partner with the studio to make sure that it's not just, they're not a funding bank for you, that are just going to steamroll you and you don't do anything for them back in return. So yes, if certain studios are re-strategizing their way, there is reason, because the monies that you get out of just pure Hindi film exposure in terms of distribution is not what you are imagining it to be. Because you are empowered by certain verticals like satellite, but satellite buys certain kinds of films, because what works on Indian television sometimes necessarily does not equal box office success. Sometimes a film that may have failed at the box office rates tremendously on television, and vice versa. It's happened, like statistically, I'll tell you, there are films of mine, like say A Student of the Year, that does a 70 crore net at box office, but has a 4.4 rating on television. Whereas Ye Jawani Hai Diwani does 180 crores at the box office, but does a 3.2 at the television. So there is no logic. Then I've heard of many humongous movies that have not rated that high, and some films that were failures that have rated. So even with music, one doesn't know. So studios like, say, UTV, when they make so much money on a Jungle Book, and then with the film, with the Captain America that releases post that, and then they see their balance sheet of losses on other films, they probably re-strategize, reinvent. But I don't think that for very long they're going to distance themselves. They will be back in the game, I'm sure, but at new modalities, new rules, new regulations, new infrastructure creations. So yes, it's time for analysis. It's time for us to take a step back and see that when we make movies, and I learned, for me, there's never a failure, there's always a lesson. And every time there's been a lesson learned from a failure, I try and engulf that within the process at Dharma and make sure those mistakes aren't made again. It's all about cost efficiency, budget control, and monitor your level of delusion. There's no way that I can start believing that every product of mine is a supreme product and is going to open to thunderous houses. Today, when you get that opening, it is something that is rare. That early morning gush that was a given in the 80s. When you had big movie stars, those films opened, irrespective of its content. Today, you're targeting, you have something called a tracking meter. Your Ormax is a research company that tells you your opening day box office prediction. And then you're seeing things like appeal, interest, reach, buzz. All that has become much more like unlocks they endorse to the shows they do, to the entrepreneurship that they have. Be Shah Rukh Khan, who is also an entrepreneur. He owns a cricket team. He's always been exceptionally business savvy. Exceptionally, they're all businessmen as well. So they leverage their positions as movie stars and have taken it to various levels, which is intelligent and very forward, progressive moving of them. It's not always, very few actors really have just made a certain amount of wealth as a result of the movies they've done. There are always other avenues of income. So when they're on the Forbes list, it's not just the wealth they have amassed within the movie structure. It's out of it as well. Because what happens is the stardom is much larger than the money in your bank. It's like, naam bada darshan chota. It's literally, people think that we all have enough wealth to put into Swiss banks. It's not true at all. It's a myth. You could be a brand in this country, but not necessarily match the bandwidth of that brand economically at all. You may actually have nothing compared to people who are lesser known. Sure. Because the movies have a tendency of making you seem larger than life. The very intelligent men and women in the business have actually invested well, have actually gone beyond the periphery of their fraternity and gone beyond it. And I think that's why they come into those lists, because the wealth is just not cinema. It's brand plus what they do with it.
Right. Right. But given that cinema will always be, at least mainstream cinema will always be star-driven, do you think that at some level the film industry in itself gets beholden by 4 or 5 people, and when their movies come out, it's a hit. Otherwise, you just don't know.
It's actually, if you ask me, the middle order cinema is what's going to suffer. It's the what you know as indie cinema in the
Sure.
West. It's the tiny, powerful film, the Piku, the Pink, the Nirja, the Kapoor and Sons, the Urta Punjab, the cost to profit ratios, which are actually enormous. Those will be the gems of the year. And then there'll be the big event film, the Bajrangi Bhaijaan, the Sultan, the Rais, the Fan, the Dangal, the bigger movies. It's the middle order that you need to really monitor. Really you have to kind of make sure that those are not, don't go over the top in terms of budget. Because then everybody has to come on board. Actors have to know if they love a script, you can't go crazy charging that kind of money. And then everything else then has to peter down along with it, because the cost of marketing a film at the minimum level is 6 crores. The maximum can go up to 20. But even if yours is a tiny endeavor, you have to spend an X amount of money. Or then you be very creative about you. Like when we were presenting and marketing Lunchbox, it was a challenge because we had little money, but we had to make whatever noise we could. So you become clever. Those are few and far between, and a lot of academia and a lot of thought has to go into marketing a tiny film. Not every film, firstly, is worthy of a larger audience within that context. Like when I saw Lunchbox at Cannes, I told the UTV guys, I said, this film will make money, but you have to be clever about it. So we came up with, say, a line like, how do you fall in love with someone you never met? You build intrigue. You have to kind of do that. So there is a structure, but not every film warrants that. After that, there were a series of films that came to our table about, let's do this. It's a tiny film, just like Lunchbox. No, there's one Lunchbox. It's not every film that will do the same. There were many other endeavors and Me Too's of that zone, but not all of them struck a chord with an audience. So as I said, going back to your question, it's the smaller film and the small film with high content and the larger film with big movie star, or then maybe big CG appeal, etc. That will make a big mark. The middle order has to be monitored, or else it will result in the closure of many films, many studios, and many careers.
But I mean, you know this better than anybody else, of course, in this auditorium, is that at the end of the day, the audience really goes looking at who's the face on the
That's
poster,
day
right?
one. The whole thing has changed, man, which I think I call it the Saturday phenomenon. Like the good films are the Saturday films, the ones that really get spoken about on Friday. And one thing about our country you have to know, word of mouth travels faster than anything else. Your film is good in the morning, by the afternoon you'll see the spike, by the night you'll see packed halls, the Saturday will be humongous. I've seen that in all films that have been appreciated. So it's no longer, yes, for the certain films, the day one is going to be driven by perhaps those 3 or 5 large movie stars. But let me tell you, your film is good, you see the spike through the day. Like it's what happened recently with the success of Pink. It started at a certain number, it ended at a much higher number, and the next day the growth was phenomenal, and Sunday was like, it was cemented that it was a big success. So, as I said, it's now today become a Saturday. It's all become all about the Saturday. And your Saturday holds strongly, you know you're home. So it's no longer, I feel, don't go crazy with the film marketing it if you don't feel it has the right chops to get that number on day one, because no matter what you do, you won't get the number. If your film is really strong, show it internally, do your research screenings, show it to 200 people, that is this appealing to all PGs of people, make sure you do that before you hit the cinema hall. And then of course, you get an indication if it's a good film, it will definitely go on to do a large number. Unless of course we have restrictions of genre, like, there is deep dark content also that won't travel. But elevating films, all the films that have done well, actually that have been tiny, if you notice there's a certain sparkle and happiness to them eventually. The deeper, darker films do kind of have a restriction eventually. We are not a country that is very accepting to dark genre. Period. Those don't cross a certain number. No matter either it's a Raman Raghav or Urta Punjab, there will be a restriction eventually, because darkness, grey areas of relationships, or just generally gritty dark themes, don't meet with a favorable audience.
Right, but I was talking more in terms of investment in human resources, as it were, or investment in movie stars, as it were. What happened? Names, but they remain the top guys even in 2016. Like, was there something that the film industry did not consciously invest in to create brands from then till now?
It's actually the thing is that these men have gone through their own ups and downs with their careers. You know, they always have. But they've built an equity from a time that is very tough for the younger generation because they built an equity in a time when footfalls were very high, where people knew them. So their generation went on to produce children who loved the same stars. And then the footfalls fell. So these younger generation movie actors do not have the pleasure or the privilege of those large numbers that these stars that were built in the 90s and the late 80s had. Shah Rukh Khan came up in 91, Amir Khan in 88, and as Salman, I think, in 89, with Maine Pyar Kiya. 88, 89, 91. They had a decade heads up of building an equity, which none of these actors today, those numbers have not been seen. The number of people, you are made a big star by the number of people worldwide that have seen your movies. The equity built through the films that Shah Rukh, Amir, Salman and Akshay have done, through these 2 decades, that number, none of these no matter what the hit number
are you saying that that idea of the superstar, as it were, is a 90s thing? It's not possible to rebuild that.
I'm not saying anything is impossible because you can never say never, but it's going to be very tough for a Ranveer Singh or a Ranbir Kapoor to kind of build the equity. And I'm saying they have the talent, they're amazingly talented actors, but to build that audience base, that exceptionally loyal, faithful, fanatic fans of yours, you need to build those movies that have done those numbers over a period of time, just like Amitabh Bachchan, who had built his equity from the 70s and 80s, and it was only when these boys came up, who had the same audience numbers, they started dwindling in the multiplex era post 2001. Those numbers started reducing considerably with the advent of plexes and when single screens were slightly diminished as a result of the plex audience, which means the pricing became more expensive, which means because of economic factors we lost a very large audience. So there's a whole section now that used to watch movies in the 70s and 80s and the 90s up to mid-level 90s. They don't watch movies at all anymore. They come out once for like Bhai's film is out and they'll come out on Eid and Diwali in stormy numbers. There are huge amount, and the other thing is the time factor is something like the biggest superstar in this country, according to me, is still the national holiday. That is the biggest superstar. We have mega stars. Salman is a mega star. Shah Rukh, Amir, humongous stars. But that combined with a national holiday is an unbeatable combination. Because we're still a country that has so much happening in our lives. You know, we're fighting urban angst every day. You're fighting your career crisis every day. You're fighting your own family issues every day. We're very involved in our zone. That happens in a country such as ours. It's only that national holiday and that Sunday where we feel that we can really get out to watch a film. So it's the biggest superstar, I believe, is the national holiday.
But I'll take you up on the single screen and the multiplex, and that happened in the 2000s. Distinction, as it were?
Look, there is films that are very, you call it the high urban film. Then you have those that where the lines are blurred. Like, you know, films like, say, that actually do well in both sections. You know, like, say, a Sultan or a Bajrangi Bhaijaan that have record very high collections.
Right, so we would imagine Salman to be a single screen star.
But his movies, the last 2 movies have done phenomenal business. And if you see it, you cannot do high numbers till you don't appeal to the multiplex audience. It's not possible. Because that has become the chunk of the pie. It's a 70-30 divide on a very big film. 30 single screen, 70 multiplex. So when that multiplex audience has really lapping up every Salman Khan film, ever since Wanted actually, he's become a rage in both sections. And as is Shah Rukh and as is Amir, carrying the equity forward from what they built in the 80s and 90s. That combination is ridiculously unbeatable. And these younger boys, I can tell, and right up to now, if you see even today, we're in 2016, 2017, 18, you still have the big festivals blocked by the big boys. So it's almost like there are obstacles for like these younger kids who are also not any young anymore. They're all in their 30s. So it's going to be very difficult for them to build that equity in this country because they just don't have the support of those humongous numbers. It's like those guys who were young in the 80s, produce children now in this generation, and they're still loving Salman Khan and Shah Rukh Khan as much as they did then. The kids automatically start loving them just by, then they build their own love for like say Varun Dhawan or Ranbir Kapoor or Ranveer Singh or Siddharth Malhotra. They build that equity, but that love has to come in humongous numbers. It's all, if you really academically analyze it, it's a number game. It's just the number of people that have loved are much more than they are loving today.
But even then, so you as a producer, Karan, you invested in three people, you decided to put your name onto a film. It was very clear to everyone exactly why you're doing it, because then you created three new stars to give face, big
Be rest
faces.
assured, I
Yeah.
did it more for myself.
Sure.
I did it because I felt I wanted to make my youngest film at 40. And I knew it was going to be a high school musical that would be like not loved by critics or anyone who knows anything about cinema would think that's pop culture frivolous fun at best perhaps. I was very aware of it, but I needed to make my youngest film because I had done My Name is Khan and Kavi Alvida, which were slightly heavier themes, and I felt I needed to be relevant to a younger generation. It was a calculated move at my end because I felt like kids who were 12 and 13 and 11 didn't know me as a filmmaker, and I felt that if I need to survive for the next 2 decades as a relevant filmmaker, I need them to know who I am. So Student of the Year was a franchise created to connect to the kids, which is what I did. And I didn't dumb myself down because I love that kind of zone. Like I love song and dance and happiness and great looking fun people feeling, and I just felt I needed to feel young to make this young film. I did it. I did not do it to launch their careers and do it for them selflessly. It was a selfish move. In turn, the three of them actually went on to have careers which I'm very proud of, and all of them deserve the places that they have got in cinema. But that was a very structured, strategized move because I felt I'd reached a time that if I made yet another star vehicle, I was going to get into the zone, and that I wasn't going to get out of. Taking a superstar and taking a big release date and you coming along with that is playing safe somewhere, and I think that you need to kind of, for your company, work and focus on different energies. Like to me at Dharma, the ethos is to make all kinds of movies. Of course I would love to do the superstar vehicle film, but if you recently see that I try to put my infrastructure and resources on movies that are slightly unusual. Sometimes you'll hit the spot, sometimes you won't at all. It's really a hit and miss zone, but I've tried to do it with the younger actors constantly. It's been our endeavor always. Like when we made Wake Up Sid with Ranbir, our next move with him was to mount him on a Ye Jawani Hai Diwani and give him that epic love scale, to kind of make sure that we kind of grow within the realm of the younger generation. I'm a big supporter of wanting these kids to kind of really grow.
Right. But you are at some level the old world producer as well, in the sense that you're a creative producer. You'll put in thought behind things you do. You're also a creative person in terms of whether you're directing the film or not.
Right.
I mean, you take ownership of the product, as it were. But when we compare someone like you, someone like Aditya Chopra, to say a Disney or a Viacom, which are headed by people from marketing backgrounds, people from perhaps not even
Really like running running a home or a kitchen in a home as opposed to a five-star hotel. Really, you'll put in that much more. Everything, you will look at every ingredient that goes into every piece of food that you make. Whereas in a five-star hotel, you're going to kind of try to say make things in bulk and not perhaps be attached to every spice that goes into every dish. So we're pretty much, Adi and me come from that school where none of us actually ever on set when we make a film, we greenlight a script and we stay away. And then we enter the stage when the film, and sometimes I watched a couple of films and at the final stage I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be an epic disaster, there's nothing you can do. We can just say, okay, God bless us and move on. Or there are films that you can fight and do something with it and reshoot, probably re-add, and it's more nurturing, it's much more internal, and that's what we try and do at our end. I think we're more boutique. Of course, Yash Raj is the largest studio and it has an infrastructure and an entire distribution vertical along with it. But I think both the ethos of both Adi and mine are the same. We're more hands-on and look at everything. And of course, we leave it be. Like I believe the director should actually be left on his or her own devices eventually. And there are many a time both of us, we exchange notes. We're best friends. We speak to each other, and I always ring him up before a release of mine that I think is going to fail. Never a one that's going to succeed.
So you show it to her?
No, we don't show each other's either, but we talk to each other. I'm like, yeah, this Friday is going to be awful, it's going to flop. So he was like, why do you say that? I'm like, it's a really bad film, now what to do? So he's like, now what do you do? And then he told me, like, don't watch this film, or don't tell me what you thought of it. Like, we have an honest discussion because that's the one thing that I learned from him, and he learned from his dad, is that none of us are deluded. We know when a film is wrong. but we still made it, right? We have to put it out, and we have like, I've actually sat with the director once, only the director and I know this. We sat, he showed me the final cut of his film, and I said, okay, chalo, listen, this is an epic disaster. You must know this. You're a bright boy. You went wrong. We've all gone wrong. Now we will go out and act. We will go out and tell the marketing team it's great. We'll tell the actors it's amaze. And we'll sell it like it's the best film in the world. But you must know it's not good. And it's going to flop. So he was like, and he with a white face looked at me and said, how can you say that? I'm like, because I can't lie to you. Because then the next time when I like your film, you won't believe me. So that's why it's important, you must know, ये flop होने वाली है. लेकिन अभी हमें बहुत बुरी flop हुई. लेकिन उसका वो कभी देखो flop picture को पहचानना बहुत आसान हो जाता है. It's the hit ones that are tough to tell. Because you never know. You know, the ones I'm always nervous about, I'm always very calm on the morning of a flop film. Because I know. You know, it's the hit ones that I pop pills for. Because you have an expectation within. You know, the flop ones, you just know. I've been watching films in a cinema hall in packed single screens since I was 4 years old. I'm a full filmy bacha like them. You cannot be more filmy than me. I've clapped, I've cried. I'm that popcorn eating wala audience that, you know, that cries in cinema halls and claps in a moment. Like, I become like that. So when I watch a flop film, I know it, dude. I just know it. It's not run. No, I don't care what you think of it. I know it already. Like, you know, whatever. And of course, I read it's the ones you get attached to that you really feel can do that extra mile. Those are the ones you know. See, that kind of sense only some of us producers who've been in the thick of Hindi films have. Adi has it, I have it. We know when we messed up. Sometimes you'll go, like, very rarely, you'll go wrong with your instinct. Like, you know, like I got very attached to say, wrongly so perhaps it was not a film that connected. Like, say a film like Kurban, when I watched, I had liked it aesthetically. I liked the film. So when it bombed, it was a bit of a surprise for me. You know, sometimes once in your whole career you'll go through that zone where a film that you did not get, that you got attached to and it didn't work. Those are moments of great disappointment. Now what happens in the studio system is that people who are more or less come in are not Hindi cinema or Indian cinema lovers like we have. We've grown up. I've grown up watching every kind of feature film you can think of. You know, I've gone to those trial shows as a child, and, you know, I was one of those kids that when the censor certificate said 23 reels, I used to get excited. You know, that number, and it was 15, it was like, hi, itni choti picture kyun hai? You know, it was like not like today where we are like, 3 hours, who's going to watch 3 hours? Like, it's not like that. It used to be exciting when it was a long film, you know, and when there was a censor cut, there used to be a triangle, and used to be like, oh, I wonder what got cut. Like, you know, we were those, and if there was an adult with that big circle around it, you definitely wanted to see that film. So I grew up in that era, so there's no way that we don't have an understanding. So go back to the basic point of our chat, is that some of us are just in a beautiful way, old school, old world film trained, and with modern sensibilities. We are actually in a really great place to run movie studios. But unfortunately, we need the funding because we are all like, you know, we're all like, we have like either created wealth or inherited wealth, and our wealth is just enough for us to keep putting it back into the movies. Like, I don't have the kind of infrastructure or monies to take multiple risks. So if someone comes that, are you willing to make a film that we don't know when we're going to run? I said, no, I don't want to make this film. I don't want to know. I want to make a film that I believe can make money. I'm not here to take those chances and risks. I can't afford it. Not for my company, not for anything.
Right. So, like, mortgages his house, puts in everything he's got into a film, then the movie bombs, then he's on the street.
That was like my dad. He was that man. I used to wake up in the morning on a film release. He gave 6 failures in a row. And it was like always I saw him in his white kurta and his lungi with his head on his hand and like Monday ko drop away picture. And I'm like, you know, what to do? And the CPCI ka distributor ka phone aata tha, and we knew it was like tension ka mamla because we knew the film was not going to run for whatever reason. My mother and I were always more in tune. I've seen that happen, that old school world of filmmaking. As charming as it was very heartbreaking because, you know, those were also tough days where we've actually literally, I mean, I know for a fact, like, my dad has actually had to sell a piece of property of his to make up for the losses of a film. It's happened in front of my eyes. Those were financer days where you paid interest, you got finance, private finance, put it, and everything was riding on that, where you dealt with not managers but star secretaries, and everyone spoke Punjabi. It was the industry language in the 80s. Like, for some reason, I thought that there was nobody with no other community who made movies because my father only spoke to people in Punjabi. Actors spoke Punjabi, distributors spoke Punjabi, and, you know, and those Punjabi distributors used to say funny things, you know, on the phone. So it was like, I still remember, I thought Kuch Kuch Hota Hai was like a big hit. and I got a call. The Bihar distributor called, and I was pleading like a peacock in those days because I thought I had made this big ball. And on the phone, the Bihar distributor told me, "अरे क्या picture बना दी? Average गई हमारी territory में." So I was like, "क्या मतलब super hit नहीं से नहीं? दूल्हे राजा बहुत बड़ी hit है यहाँ. कुछ कुछ होता है average गई." I was shattered. I said, "I don't know what this Bihar distributor is talking about," and I put the phone down. But it was a reality. It was like, today, who knows what we don't even see a territory-wise breakdown. Now we get the figure, like the whole box office figure. So much has evolved and changed, and you could say, Mayank, that some of the charm and the old school world has been replaced by the excessive corporate nature of our movies. But it's the order of the day. It's just like we don't have celluloid anymore. We're digital.
Right.
So now we're corporate.
But does it change things though, where you're so hugely invested in a film, rather than when you are a corporate firm and so what if it doesn't do well? You could just switch jobs.
Yeah, but that's them. It's not us. And I'm.
So you think that could be one of the factors of the decline, as it were, or at least a slowdown?
I would like to believe that everyone invested in movies has a passion for the product they're attached to, and I believe that the corporates I deal with, like when I deal with the team at Fox just now, I think they're also, we track a film on a daily basis. I feel they're all exceptionally passionate. It's strategy that needs to be adopted, and I think everybody has to just now make sure the budget of a film is in control. Once you have that, there's no way that this industry can't maintain its strength. It's the budgets and that and the ridiculous investment that is being put into a film that may not have a large eyeball audience. Like, you have to be very, very clever about those things, like, and not fall prey into just big names, because there is no guarantee that big names equal big success. You have to be, it's also the theme of film you have to look at. Holistically, you have to look at a product and say, does this film have the bandwidth to do that number if this is what we're investing in? You need strategy, you need your resources to be intelligent about that kind of strategy, so you need to do that. You will lose money, perhaps, in movies, but the losses should not be so monumental that you'd want to shut shop.
But back in the day again, and up until, in fact, even 7-8 years ago, Karan, I mean, if a Spielberg movie came out, none of you would care, right? It's okay, fine. Some Hollywood movies coming out. And suddenly, like for instance...
Will not worry us. But okay. Fast and the Furious will.
But did it worry you, would it have worried you, say...
No, not at all, not at all. Because
so
as I said,
changed, right?
the multiplex, the audiences, the lines are totally blurred. The thing is that that we have stopped. A lot of our content has become Me Too of what they do. If we updated our storytelling and made very strong thematic films that were actually not borrowed or Me Too versions, but created our own content, we can make our own Lord of the Rings. We need to make it our way, keeping our enormous culture in mind. We can make our own love stories with its own organic issues and problems. The thing is, what happens when we start emulating, then that's when you start losing an audience to better products of the same genre. You have to maintain, and I'm saying it progressively. You can, when you make a Piku, it's an amazing indie film. It's outstanding. It retains its inherent value system or the culture of our country and does a spin. I mean, come on. We all know that, constipation is a big problem in our country because of the food we eat. But look at the spin-off on that film. Like, it's just amazing when you see a film or when you see a film like Nirja, which is a true biopic of a person of our land who was fought a brave story. These are examples. None of these are Me Toos of anything you've seen anywhere else. Nirja was no Aaron Brockovich. It maintained its identity. And for certainly, Piku was not like Little Miss Sunshine or anything else. It maintained its own individuality. That's what we need to do, is retain our individuality, not sell our content or emulate our content with anything else. And we will always create our own work. It's the problems happen in movies is recently if our action films are all seeming like they're like poorer versions of things that are seen. So obviously an audience will run to see Fast and the Furious because they don't want to see something that is a substandard version of the very same thing in our land. So that has to be maintained. You have to maintain your individuality. And the only time countries in the world have actually fumbled and failed prey to Hollywood is when they lost their own essence. In world cinema as well, be it French, Polish, German, everyone. I mean, they lost their essence. They started doing things the Hollywood way. Hollywood came and took over. See, Hollywood has the bandwidth. It has the infrastructure. It has 100 years of history. They are very capable of taking over you till you maintain your own strength. We have such a large commercial base and such a large domestic faithful audience that we should in no means lose our individuality.
But if you were to, for instance, make a film that would be a Hollywood blockbuster prototype, as it were. Uh, you obviously can't because the numbers or the kind of scale that Hollywood can afford, nobody in Andheri can, or India can. Now it's the same. So clearly, is that what
That's
happened?
what we have to like. They will invest if they realize our cinema. If you notice the biggest hits of Hindi cinema that have all the supposed 300 crore club, PK, Sultan, Bajrangi Bhaijaan. None of these films. They're all emotional stories. None of them are high on CG. None of them have got flying people. None of them are firefighting and the world is coming to an end and there's one team of Avengers who are avenging. All these three are emotional dramas that are rooted in the culture of our land in terms of emotion, and they have all done 300 crores plus. Because these are now more power to that content, and more of such movies have to be made on larger scales because they are not Me Too's. That's what works. So that's what we need to start doing, is basically go back to the core content. Writing needs to be empowered. So much needs to be done. We don't need to we don't need to do what they do. They're doing it phenomenally well, but they can't do what we do. Nobody can do drama and emotion the way we do it. I've seen the reaction of our films even in the Western world when I've been to Cannes or to Berlin. Or, like I remember 2001, I mean this is of course strange now. I remember we were showing at the Cannes market, we showed Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. And they've never stopped a film midway because they don't know the concept of an interval. But we stopped and everybody started clapping at interval and walked out sad. And they said that, oh my God, what a dark film. How Bollywood film has just ended so sad. And this is so tragic that he's been banished from the house and the film has ended and so dark. So I was like, no, there's a whole 1.5 months left. The second brother has to go back now and there are going to be 4 more songs. And and the German lady looked at me aghast and she said, what will I do about dinner? I said, when you watch a Bollywood film, you don't eat dinner. So I was like this. And so I was just like,
It's a huge hit in Germany, by the way.
It is.
Huge.
And at the end of that film, I'm not lying to you, I felt I was at a funeral and someone deep that they all loved was dead. I think they were so exhausted because they had not cried so much in their entire life. As much as they cried in those 3 hours and 32 minutes. And they were just transfixed by the emotion. Because everything in their cinema is so subtle. But we come and yank your souls out. We beg you to cry. As filmmakers, we make you we make you reach such a point that you're weeping and we are still at it. Because that's the way we are as filmmakers. We don't let you go so fast. It's the way it is with cinema, in India. And what we do, they can't do. They don't know how to do it. The way we make people cry, no one can. It's just the way. So if you retain your soul, you maintain your entire, and we will always maintain. Like we have an interval. Like when Sitfield, and God bless his soul, came and gave a master class on screenplay. I wanted to meet him and ask him one question. I'm like, sir, how do you write this how do you write 3 acts with an interval? Do you know it's the biggest problem? We keep on going on, our writing, but ladies and gentlemen, we have an interval. We peak twice in movies. We have to, because you go like that, interval. Then you have to come back and start your story. Who does that anywhere else in the world? We are never given credit that when you write a great film in Hindi or Indian cinema, you must understand it is a piece of genius if you get it right. Because no writer in the world has to deal with what we have to deal with. We have to deal with an interview. People stop the movie, go out, talk on the phone to each other, eat, and come back, and then you have to absorb their attention all over again. How is it possible? All of you, as a bunch of critics, have to account for the fact that when you have an interval, we are the only land that talks about film in 2 halves. We are first half achhi thi, second half nahi thi, second half achhi thi, first half nahi thi. In the world, they don't get this. I want to tell you, got the world, they're like, what do you mean the first half is not good and the second half is good? Is the film good or not? I'm like, no, but हमारे यहाँ होता है. Interval के बाद क्या चली picture? और interval के बाद flop हो गई, एकदम गिर गई picture. But you've liked 1.5 hours, but you've not liked the last 1 hour, so you hated the movie. But what about the first 1.5 hours that you liked? But that's the problem, is the interval. So no screenplay lesson in the world. No, when people go abroad to learn, I tell them, go for fun, go to LA and New York, have your fun and come back. Don't waste your time, because when you come back here, यहाँ जीना यहाँ मरना यहाँ. इसके सिवा जाना कहाँ? Because you will only, I can tell you what the power of an interval is. Like my father used to tell me when I was young, इंटरवल के बाद बफर सीन रखो. I said बफर सीन का क्या मतलब होता है? वो जब पॉपकॉर्न खाते हैं ना, तो पहला सीन ऐसा होना, फ्लैट होना चाहिए, कोई ज्यादा इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं देना चाहिए इंटरवल के बाद. How to write these things? Yeah? How do you account for a buffer scene? What is a buffer scene? How do I explain to you as a mainstream critic that I wrote a buffer scene because you were eating popcorn? It's not my fault. So these were the old school kind of theories, and I think that we are a unique country because we stop our narrative and start it again. And now we do it to Hollywood films as well. I feel sorry for those Hollywood filmmakers if they ever saw their films in at a PVR or at a fun, because they'll stop the movie wherever they want and then start it whenever they have to. You know, it's wonderful. Only we do that in our land.
So at some level, do we see a return?
There's no return of that producer. They are probably not existent right now and probably don't
No, I
have
don't
the
mean those
bandwidth.
same people coming back, but the model.
No, they are not coming, they're dead. They can't come back. They are all dead. We have to, at our ground level, make sure that we kind of, and I'm not saying we have to be progressive, as I said in content, it's all we need to do, Mayank. It's simple mathematics. Your budget has to keep in mind the genre of film and the extent at which it can do. It's a simple stroke of paper you write down, your recoveries of music, overseas potential, India potential, which you must take an average recovery number, a satellite number, and now a digital number. Then spend accordingly, pay accordingly, put riders on payment if you want a big star who loves your screenplay, should come along, just like the way it is in the West. You have to have, it has to be an inclusive exercise now. You have to sit down with a great script, go to good actors, and pretend they are not movie stars. Because today, every time you set up a project, it's going to fall flat on its face. If I overpay anyone who's not giving me the eyeballs, how am I going to make sure that the studio makes money? If I'm borrowing studio money, I bloody well make sure that the studio makes money. It's my job to do that. Otherwise, I will be wiped off and vanish. So when I have Fox money with me today, I have a wonderful deal with them. Every single day, I make sure that that I work towards them making money. It's only then that I will feel empowered. So the responsibility on the producer is tremendous, and he or she has to take that responsibility. We cannot look at studios as sheer banks that are steamrolling money for us and we cannot be accountable. That is ridiculous. If I built a bungalow and they left their job, I should feel completely shitty about it, and I refuse to be that person or producer. I'll never be.
Well, you know, the old world producer, as you said, what is it that you do that you are everybody's buddy?
I'm just available and accessible. I mean, you know, I think much ado about nothing, Mayank. You can't take yourself too seriously in any job. You could be president of the country, and I think you should not take yourself seriously. What I do is a job. I owe my accessibility to my fraternity and the people within it, be it members of the media or be it, as much as I can, I'm accessible. I mean, that's the only thing that I can do, because people need people. We need each other for us to survive within the domain. And it's difficult for you, if you alienate yourself and put yourself up on a pedestal and no one can reach you from that pedestal, all you will do is fall. You know, there is no way. So accessibility, affability, and amiability. These are the 3 A's I live by, and that's the only mantra I have.
So that's the opening chapter of your book. Okay.
Well, I don't know. And none of them could be friends of mine, by the way. They could be healthy acquaintances.
Sure.
Because friends, you don't make friends and you don't make family that easily. Friends happen with a period of time. But being nice and being cooperative and just being a member of the fraternity without any trappings, I think is just the way. And I don't take myself too seriously, because I know if I have a success today, I'll have a failure next week or next month, and that should not take away from who I stand for as a filmmaker. You'll go through your ups and downs, but doesn't mean if you're on an up, you behave like, you know, you're superior. A feeling of superiority is so stupid and so last season. Like, I feel like it's just not the way to be. When I see certain filmmakers or actors on that zone, I feel like it's so short-lived, because, you know, it's the biggest names in the world and in our industry are the ones that will actually call you immediately when they have something. They will call you. People in between won't call you. Like, I've learned this when I've seen people like someone like Yash Chopra, who was like a father figure to me. 7 in the morning he has to get his call for anything he wanted. You call Mr. Bachchan, he'll call you back. The greatest people in the movie industry are the most accessible people. It's the middle order who don't know where they are, the ones that actually are the ones that you'll never get a reply from. You'll send them incessant text messages and there'll be no reply. And those are the ones you know will not last forever.
Speaking of last season, what we're looking forward to is the...
It's just another season.
Yeah.
We haven't created many more stars to have, so there's nothing new. It's me.
the same lot?
It's the same lot in different combinations. Luckily, they have new enemies, lovers, and controversies. So that keeps changing. Nothing else is going to change. I can assure you, when people say, what's new? I'm like, nothing. I'm older, they are older, and they just have more combinations to deal with. But it'll be as fun, it always is. I mean, Coffee with Karan is what I do as a hobby that pays really well. It's somehow
Thanks for slipping
that Coffee with Karan and Fox are my two funding studios.
Are you starting with Fawad Khan?
No, I'm not. I haven't yet reached the combination. There's been a lot of conjecture about that. But no, we're zeroing in on our episode 1. We'll announce it soon.
Super. Questions from the audience?
And you know what not to ask. You should be clever enough, because you will get a silent smile and have Mayank say, please could you restrict yourself to questions relating to the topic of discussion. Am I right, Mayank? Yeah, correct.
Totally.
While he sips his coffee.
Hi Karan, I am Major Muhammad Ali Shah.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. I would rate you as one of the supreme filmmakers in the country. And me coming from a theatre background, I want to know, as a filmmaker, does theatre appeal you as well?
I have a great regard for talent on any platform. I'm not much of a viewer, and I have to admit to my, I would say my own unhappiness, that I haven't watched much of theatre in India. It's simply because I've just not been able to and I say making no time for it would be actually demean the amazing, I think, talent that is on theatre. I haven't had friends around me who've actually encouraged me to go and see theatre. I've heard a lot, and I know there are people who are fantastic and do amazing work on theatre. But yes, actors from theatre, I've definitely engaged with and worked with, and I would love to. And I think it's the age of talent that comes from all possible verticals in the entertainment zone. But to answer your question, I haven't seen much of theatre in India.
I'll invite you for my play, Karan.
Thank you, but I don't know what you look like because this light is right on your face. Right?
Major Shah, incidentally, Karan is Nasir's nephew. He was there at the session yesterday.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, he's a theatre veteran and amazing and makes great copy for anyone who interviews him.
Thanks, Karan.
You can just...
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Among the current crop of actors, you asked कि इतना मुश्किल क्यों है, and you said it's literally impossible to cross the Khans or yesterday Kapoors or whatever in the popularity. तो आपने बोला कि जो ये बहुत मुश्किल होगा क्योंकि they already had their base from the footfalls. Now, do you also think one reason can you attribute this to this fact that the gap between the celebrity and the common man is also getting bridged? You know, जब हम लोग बड़े थे, like when I was watching your movie कुछ कुछ होता है in a very small town in Bihar, so I used to like it. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा था, मैं छोटा था तो. लेकिन अभी मैं अपनी भांजी को फिल्म दिखा रहा था, उसे पसंद नहीं है. तो अब लोगों को ये समझ में आ रहा है कि ये प्यार मोहब्बत ये सब फिल्मी चीजें हैं और रियल लाइफ में ऐसा होता नहीं है. हमारे टाइम में ऐसा लगता था, हाँ ऐसा ही होता है, लड़की को 2 बार ये किया तो हाँ, जबकि अभी ऐसा होता नहीं, होना नहीं चाहिए.
बड़ी कठोर दिल है तुम्हारी. तो ये मैं कहना चाहूँगा, और मेरे दिल को ये छू गई है बात कि आपकी भांजी को मेरी पहली फिल्म पसंद नहीं आई. इस बात का बहुत रोना होगा मुझे, रात को मैं फूट के रोने वाला हूँ कि आपकी भांजी को मेरी फिल्म पसंद नहीं आई. देखिए, खैर, आपका कहना मैं मानता हूँ कि वो फिल्मों का जो सुर था और जो टोनैलिटी था उस ज़माने में, वो एक इनोसेंस थी उस फिल्म में. जब हम कहते थे उस फिल्म में कि प्यार दोस्ती है, लव इज़ फ्रेंडशिप, वो थीम को मैंने आज भी मैंने फिल्म बनाई है, लेकिन अपडेट किया उसकी टोनैलिटी को, सिंटैक्स को, ताकि आपकी भांजी को पसंद आ जाए. तो क्योंकि अब आपकी भांजी मेरी बैरोमीटर बन चुकी है. लेकिन वो एक ऑर्गेनिक इनोसेंस था उस फिल्म में, जो जब मैं भी 24 साल का था जब मैं वो फिल्म मैंने लिखी है, और मैं इंस्पायर था राज कपूर से, यश चोपड़ा से, और वो फिल्में, वो खैर दैट इज वन टॉपिक. तो वो एक इनोसेंस थी उस जमाने में, जो आज मैं वही फिल्म नहीं लिख सकता. जब मैं खुद कुछ होता है देखता हूँ, and I was joking earlier, but when I see कुछ होता है today और कभी खुशी कभी गम, I myself wonder कि मैंने ये क्यों लिखा, कैसे लिखा, कहाँ से ख्याल मेरे जहन में आए. क्योंकि एक्चुअली कुछ होता है बहुत ही अनयूजुअली सिली थीम है, क्योंकि पता नहीं उस 8 चिट्ठियों में वो माँ ने क्या लिखा था. 4 साल का बच्चा क्या पढ़ता है वो इतनी कन्विक्शन के साथ कि 8 चिट्ठियां माँ ने छोड़ी है, पर क्या लिखा होगा पहली चिट्ठी में, दूसरी चिट्ठी में, कि वो बच्चा सुन सके या पढ़ सके. वो लॉजिक, वो कहता है मैं जिंदगी में प्यार एक ही बार होता है, शादी एक ही बार होती है. खुद उसने 2 बार प्यार किया है, शादी 2 बार की है. सारा गलत था, लेकिन इतनी कन्विक्शन के साथ लिखी थी कि इट मेड ऑल सेंस. टुडे हम लॉजिक के बारे में सोचेंगे. आज तक मुझे किसी ने पूछे कहा शाहरुख खान का प्रोफेशन क्या था, कुछ होता है. आई हैव नो आइडिया. somebody asked me कि क्या है. I said I don't know. बिजनेस था. क्या बिजनेस, इतना बिजनेस था कि उसको इतना वक्त मिल गया कि वो समर कैंप में 1 महीना जाके बैठ गया कि कौन सा वो एम्पायर रन कर रहा था. इट वाज क्वाइट सिली. लाइक शबाना जी कॉल्ड मी, कुछ कुछ होता है कि स्क्रीनिंग उन्होंने कहीं देखी थी बर्मिंघम में, आपकी भांजी की तरह शी आल्सो हैड प्रॉब्लम्स. सो शी कॉल्ड मी एंड शी सेड कि भाई ये क्या हुआ, खूबसूरत नहीं थी तो प्यार नहीं हुआ, खूबसूरत हो गई, साड़ी पहनने लगी, बाल बड़े हो गए और इश्क हो गया उसे, क्या कहना चाहोगे? आई सेड सॉरी. I said, I don't know, you are right. I don't know, but I have no justification. I'm just sorry. Because that's what it is. और अगर आप कभी खुशी कभी गम देखोगे तो the format of कभी खुशी कभी गम is the exact same format of कुछ कुछ होता है. जहाँ से शुरू होता है flashback में, interval point कहाँ बैठ जाता है, और फिर ऋतिक रोशन is the सना, baby सना of कुछ कुछ होता है, वो जाके अपना family. It's the same screenplay. Which I actually realized much later. That time I thought I was making epic Ramayana of family film. But actually it's the same story of kuch kuch hota hai. It's the same thing. But as I'm trying to say, the innocence is dead today. वहाँ एक इनोसेंस था और वो फिल्म स्टार्स की एक अपनी अपील थी. आज क्या हो गया कि ट्विटर पे सब जानते हैं कि लोग क्या कर रहे हैं. तो जैसे कि आपकी अब यंगर जनरेशन की बात कर रहे हैं, the whole mystique and magic of movie stardom is dead. पिंक विला पे आ चुके हैं, एयरपोर्ट के बाहर निकल रहे, ये और ने आप देख रहे हो, कपड़े क्या पहन रहे, कहाँ जा रहे हैं, किससे बातें कर रहे हैं, the paparazzi is all over the place. Where is the mystery? You wanted to know कि उस जमाने में.
You think social media has killed a superstar also?
Of course, it's killed the longevity of it. Superstars will always exist. There will always be celebrities and stars. But like वो जो आपकी चाह है to find out एक स्टार के बारे में, जो आप शायद जब आप बड़े हो रहे थे, जब आप बच्चे थे और आपने पिक्चरें देखी, मेरी तरह एक मिस्टिक होता था. मैं खुद फिल्म इंडस्ट्री का हिस्सा था, लेकिन जब अमिताभ बच्चन से मेरी मुलाकात होती थी तो मेरे my knees used to start shaking. You know, because I used to feel कि my God, you know, अमिताभ बच्चन आया है मेरे सामने में और मैं उनके पैर छूता हूँ. With respect, I still do it. But there was a mystery. आजकल के बच्चे उनको लगता है कि उनके आंगन में ये स्टार्स खेल रहे हैं. क्योंकि वाकई वो हर जगह घूमो, टेलीविजन पे हो, सोशल मीडिया पे हो, ट्विटर पे हो, फेसबुक पे हो, हर जगह आते थे, popping up, you know, all over the place. They've become pop-ups now. They've stopped being stars. Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
Hi, Karan.
Hi.
So my question is with regards to the upcoming short films and web series, and as a product, how you see them? Like whole.
I think we still have to get our digital act together. I think there's a lot of talk about like this. Everything suddenly that is not being made into a film, people think that should be made into a series.
Correct.
That doesn't mean anything. You should actually structure. It has to be a structured format and a platform that you actually empower. So right now we are still, I think, very nascent. We're dabbling all over the place. Everyone's talking. Everyone's web series bana rahe, go digital, go short. It doesn't mean anything right now. It'll find its feet, but in a while. You know, it's right now, I think it's too nascent a stage, and I think that it needs a lot of larger forces to make stronger content for it to really be an empowered platform.
So are you venturing into it, like you said, that you would like to take risk and not play safe?
Well, I would like to. It's definitely on the avenue at Dharma Productions, but not right now. We are still like trying to make sure that we make our movies right.
All the best.
Thank you.
Hi Karan.
Hi.
I'm big fan of yours.
Thank you.
मैंने आपकी मूवी कुछ कुछ होता है कई बार देखी है और उसी का मैं म्यूजिक प्ले करना चाहता हूँ माउथ ऑर्गन से.
हैं?
कहना है
क्या आप करना चाहते
कपिल
हैं?
शर्मा
माउथ ऑर्गन से.
क्या आप गाना चाहते हैं?
नहीं गाना नहीं चाहता, माउथ ऑर्गन से प्ले.
ओह अच्छा हाँ, सुनाइए. आप रिकॉर्ड कीजिए, अपनी भांजी को सुनाइए. Thank you.
Karan, do you see songs ever being modified or even leaving our films in the way we've known them? Like Shah Rukh did.
I never want to see a Hindi film without a song. I mean, I'm obsessed with Hindi film music. It's what I grew up on. It's what I attach my memories are all song related. For me, I won't know how to make a film without a song. And if I did, it would be, even in the very short film I made in Bombay Talkies, I had music in it. It's deep into my DNA as a filmmaker. I don't want to go without a song. I never do.
So
I just know
does a
that.
song play before a script comes to your mind?
No, sometimes the situation lends itself. Today, of course, we're all being very clever about justifying why. Like say in "Ae Dil Hai Mushkil," Ranbir is the singer, so that's why he lip syncs. You know, now we've applied logic.
Right.
But I cannot. I don't know how to shoot a film without a song. Like, I'm obsessed. That's the only music I listen to is Hindi film music. I know nothing that's happening in the world of Western music. I hear that only because I want to update my skill as a filmmaker who's making relevant music in today's times. But for me, music is the soul of our films.
Right. Next question.
Hi Karan sir.
Hello.
First of all, I would like to thank you as you have entertained every one of us for over years.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you that as you told you have grown as typical filmy child. Did it ever came to your mind that you should be an actor rather than a director?
Yeah, it came to my father's mind first, because you know all pappas and mammas of our country, they all think that their children are great looking. So he used to look at me and say that "Arey puppy fat hai, chala jayega, tu hero ban ja." I was the only one who was more intelligent than that, and I knew that there was no part of me that should have been in front of the camera. Of course, as a movie star in a country, not at all. So yeah, there were those aspirations that were kind of trained. My father was a lovely man and loved me immensely, and according to him, I was the best looking person on planet Earth. But then he was my dad, and he had no objectivity at all. Fortunately, my mother. He wanted to till I was afraid that he would really, and I was like, and my mother was always shifty when he would say it because she didn't want to break my heart and say, "No, Karan, you can't be in front of the camera." And he used to say, I was about 200 kilos fat, and he said, "Puppy fat hai." I mean, what does he mean? This is the death of most children when their parents think their obesity is puppy fat. I mean, I was not. There was no puppy fat. I was the entire like the whole I was like huge. But he was like, "You're so good looking. You should be a hero." And there was no part of him I believed because I knew what the mirror told me, and I knew that there was no truth to it. But when I see many other people who come into movies, clearly they listen to their parents, and I didn't.
But you're a legit actor now. I mean, you've done a proper full-length role.
Listen, I'm a really sad actor because after my disastrous debut, as in the film didn't work, I've not even got one offer. And I mean, I'm not even one that I could say no to proudly. Not even a bad offer came to me. I was really shattered. I thought I did a halfway decent job in that film, and I was like, and I even read all my reviews. I got very well reviewed, and no one has come to me with even a bad role in a film. I'm really upset about that. I really want to refuse an acting role. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Here.
Hanji.
Sir, I want to ask, like Coffee with Karan is running over the years, like Mayank said. So, from आज से 7 साल पहले you hosted a show Neutrogenia Lift करा दे for a social cause. So, आगे भी आप इस तरह के कुछ shows करना चाहेंगे?
काम लेके आए
हाँ मैं क्यों नहीं करना चाहूँगा सोशल कॉज का शो अगर ऑफर आ गया तो कर लूँगा if they pay me I'll do it no I'm just joking of course नहीं मैंने वो लिफ्ट करा दे मैंने किया था it was a Yashraj show and it had a terrific message and I haven't been offered anything after that in that zone.
Last two questions, huh?
Yes, thank you.
Sir, I want to ask, do you find competition from regional cinema, and if yes, why don't you make regional cinema?
I feel I should make cinema that I understand. Like, I feel like I should never dwell in a language that I don't understand the syntax of. While I'm amazed with the rise, and more power to, like, say, Marathi cinema, which is phenomenal. Like, I was blown away by the sheer brilliance of Sairat when I saw it just now, and I was like so proud sitting and watching like a film which was so compelling goes on to do this kind of business. I'm like, more power, and I hope that all the cinema. I'm a big fan of cinema, my dear. So be it from any language, I will watch it and enjoy it and relish it. But to make it is an art form of its own, and I would never want to be just a business model just because, like, if the cinema has a large audience, I won't do it because I personally don't understand the beat of that language. Like, I need to know the beat of it. Like, that's why I'm uncomfortable making even an English language film, because that's not the syntax, though I speak it and it's my thinking language, but I still don't understand how to do it. Like, I won't be able to. Like, that's why I will always only direct Hindi language films. I have no interest in making English language movies. I love the Hindi cinema that I grew up on, and that's all I ever want to do.
As a producer, Karan, do you see, say, the rise of film like Bahubali? You know, it just came and it shattered all records.
Yeah.
And then you see a film like Sarat, which almost touched 100 crore.
Yeah.
You see that as a new place, new avenue in terms of competition?
No, well,
you already have Hollywood.
well, it's definitely a rising industry, and of course, to immediately view it as competition would be again nascent.
Sure.
But it's fine. Like, Bahubali today is a threat to any huge Hindi film. Nobody will come with it. Bahubali is a huge film. It's emerged as one of the largest movie experiences of Indian cinema, and more power to Rajamouli sir. I mean, who's actually gone, like, literally given a large section of his life to that film, and that's why it deserves all that applause. And I mean, I don't know a single person who doesn't want to watch its conclusion. I mean, it's like, it's beyond exciting, that film. I mean, I know when I watched the first part, and though we were presenting it, I was sitting there like an avid Cinegoa fan. Like, when I hugged Rajamouli, I felt like, forget any big filmmaker in the world, Rajamouli is my man. Because he made it and he showed us the path, and that's amazing.
Expecting 1,000 crore, by the way, from that film. Is that true?
Sorry? Not even the limit. I mean, for that film can do anything, because it can just, who knew what the first was going to do, you know, so you never know where it can go, where it can land.
One last question. Okay. Okay.
My name is Shadab. I really liked the movie Kuch Kuch Hota. I don't know why you said you did not like this movie, right?
No, I liked it very much. I was talking about
performance.
I just
still
don't
love
get me wrong,
the-
his Anji didn't like it.
My question is related with the topic because now all the studios are getting shut down. But you, Aditya Chopra and Sajid Nadia, those people have family background in the film industry. I think those people are really working hard and they're choosing script very carefully because they have brand name with their family. Because of that, you people are being successful. But if I'll see the studios, they are normally just doing their job because they have to work, they have to choose.
That's an answer. What's the question?
The question is because those people are shutting down because they are not putting hard in the script and you people are putting the hard.
I think we're being unfair to the studios. I think everybody works really hard. Some calculations go wrong, some budgets, as we discussed. Actually, it's a summation. Your question is a summation of what we've been discussing for the last hour. And I really think focus on writing, budgeting right is the way forward. And I think it's unfair, actually, to blame the studios or the human resources employed by the studios, because sometimes I think just certain calculations have gone wrong and resulted
There's
in
also a
certain
bunch of
changes.
takedown pieces doing the rounds on the internet.
The other, like, it's amounting to conjecture and conspiracy theory. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody knows any true facts. It's very easy to write an article, you know, but it has to come
When
from
the chips
like
are down, especially.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's very easy to have an analysis then. I mean, you know, it's all you need to do is your desktop and your thoughts. But you know, how much do you know? What is the real true fact? What are the reasons why studios take decisions? Those are things that only the internal workings of that studio will be able to tell you. And I don't think none of us are in a place to answer those questions.
Right. One last question.
Sir,
Yeah, person there. One second.
Sir?
Thank you. Hi, Karan.
Hi.
I'm a very big fan of Colors Infinity as well. So I watched that a lot, Shark Tank and etc.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. As a filmmaker, you told us that Shah Rukh, Salman, etc. They have bigger popularity, and Dhawan or Siddharth and Ranveer, they're not getting it much because of the generation and the rest of it. So I am a lawyer, but I want to get into acting. So I want to ask you a very selfish question, because all this discussion has really worried me. That if I want to get into the film industry, I'm not even the Dhawan or the Kapoor or the Ranveer Singh. Would you actually suggest me that Neha just go back to the Bombay High Court and practice?
No, I would say that if you are a good actor and you find the right platform where you get noticed. Of the four names you mentioned, Ranveer Singh and Siddharth Malhotra are not from the movies. You know, there's so many actors. The biggest movie stars in this country are not from movie industry families. Be it Mr. Amitabh Bachchan or Shah Rukh Khan. I'm down to so many actors, be it from Priyanka Chopra to so many amazing
Almost all
talents.
actresses,
They're not from the movie industry. They've made their mark. They've had, of course, there's always a combination of sincerity, talent, and destiny, which no one can be accountable for. But I would say that that definitely at the end of the day, if you have the talent and you have the right adequate platform where you get noticed. And when I talked about Varun and Siddharth and Ranveer, I said they're all immensely talented, amazing movie stars. It's just that we were comparing them to the equity built by the stars who had like a heads up from the 80s and 90s. I would say being in the movies is a gorgeous place even today. It's the best place in the world. Where else can you sing, dance, laugh and cry and still be at work? So, I mean, follow your dreams, but give your dreams an expiry date.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
So I think we're winding up. So things I've learned is colors infinity. That's what you're